students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this particular video, we are going to discuss about a recent news coming from Russia and US, where it has been decided that leaders of both countries, President Trump from the US and President Vladimir Putin from Russia, are going to meet very soon, most possibly in the United Arab Emirates. So what we have to expect, or what we can expect from such kind of meeting which is coming after a long interval, let us try to understand this in more detail. So first of all, to understand the content of this particular topic, as per the press statement released by the Kremlin which is the official what you can call as the office of the President of Russia, it has stated that US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, a meeting between them has been set, and both leaders have in principle given the approval for the venue where both leaders will meet. Now this summit is going to be the first summit that is taking place after Donald Trump has taken charge of US presidency in the early days of year 2025, and the last time both leaders met, leaders from US and Russia met, was in the month of June 2021, when the then President of US Joe Biden has met with his Russian counterpart in the Geneva, that is in Switzerland. Now also we have to understand the significance of this meeting is from the perspective of the Russia-Ukraine war, where we have seen in the 2022 when Russia waged a war on Ukraine, and one of the stated goal of Trump's presidency was to bring both countries on a table for negotiation to create a ceasefire-like condition and to permanently bring an end to this war that has been devastating the entire Eastern European region as such. Now, if you look at the background of this entire development, if you take a look at the war that has begun somewhere in the month of February 2022, because of the Russian assault, we have seen tens and thousands of Ukrainians being killed. Also, we have seen a displacement, large-scale displacement that has resulted into a refugee crisis where millions have been forced to flee their homes, and because of the destruction caused especially in the eastern and southern part of Ukraine. Now, Putin has resisted multiple calls from the US, France and Kyiv earlier for a ceasefire, because Russia believed that it has right now upper hand in the conflict, because war has reached a state of protracted war. It has reached a state of what you can call as stalemate, where there is not much development along the front, but on a long time frame, long time horizon, if you look along the front, we are seeing a gradual entry and the movement of Russians inside the Ukrainian territory as such. Also, recently we have seen a meeting of the political negotiators from both Russia and Ukraine in the Istanbul, that is the capital of Turkey. So there they also have, Russia have clearly shown its hardline approach by calling for the Ukraine to withdraw from the territory it still controls and renounce Western military support. That has to be a template for any further kind of deals and negotiation as such, which Ukraine has rejected earlier. Now also we have to understand that as far as the current crisis is concerned, where does the Russia-Ukraine war stand? So I told you that the rate of gain of territory is very slow, but it is in the favor of Russia. The momentum of war, we can understand, is in the favor of Russia, and currently many experts argue that if you look at from the perspective of win and lose, Russia clearly is winning, and no matter whatever is going to be the outcome of meeting between Trump and Putin, it seems that Ukraine will not be happy with such kind of discussion and such kind of outcome as such. So overall, if you look at the war that began somewhere in 2014, that is when Russia has annexed the Crimean Peninsula of Ukraine, and after that it also has annexed a large part of Ukraine in the eastern front, eastern territory. So overall, Ukraine has lost almost 20% of its territory, and if war drags on gradually, this number is expected to rise as such. Ukraine has neither the economic power nor the human resources as of now turn the tide of war in its favor. The only thing that can favor Ukraine and that can support Ukraine is the angle, or what you can call as the support by NATO. The problem is NATO directly cannot get directly involved in war, because that will risk a nuclear fallout, a direct nuclear war-like situation between the major powers of the world, and that is why NATO, to the maximum extent as you have seen, can provide indirect support to Ukraine by providing in military weapons and funds as such. Now, as far as the meeting is concerned, the meeting is something that is believed to be a very important what you can call as event in the last 2-3 years, because the two leaders will enter the meeting with very different expectations also. For example, you try to understand what Trump wants from this meeting. So obviously he will try to extract some kind of promise from Putin, and this promise has to be at the very least about a ceasefire that will halt the fighting in the present stance, and then further negotiation can be done that how the troops can be withdrawn, or to what extent both countries, Russia and Ukraine, are willing to sacrifice their interest. Trump believes he has the personality and the leverage to get Putin to agree to whatever he wants, but in recent time again, if you look, it seems that this has completely been wrong, because Putin has not given any kind of what you can call as weightage to the statement coming from Trump, whether it is about applying of secondary sanction, whether it is to applying strong sanctions against Russia and anything like that. So, secondly, if we try to understand from this meeting, Vladimir Putin also will have certain expectation, and his expectation will be something that Kremlin has always highlighted whenever it has talked about the war. For example, they will want a guarantee that Ukraine will never become a member of NATO, and also they would want that there should be guarantee by West that they will not receive any security guarantees from the West also, and that is where Russia is trying to draw a red line. It has stated that NATO membership is a red line for Ukraine. This is something that is non-compromisable, and that is one expectation Putin can hope from the outcome of this meeting. Moreover, Putin will also insist that territories his forces have captured, including Crimea, be recognized as Russian. So, as you can see, these are the two major what you can say expectations from the summit as such. Now, we will try to understand this in more detail. Also, we will try to understand that how India is going to be impacted by this entire development. But before that, I would want to bring your attention to the fact that at Legacy IAS Academy, we are going to soon commence batches for UPSC aspirants. That is going to be on 9th and 11th of August. The batches will be for both weekday and weekend students. Now, in this particular batch, we ensure that there is a comprehensive coverage of UPSC syllabus as demanded by the civil services examination. We have one-to-one mentorship and doubt solving sessions also. We ensure regular interactions with the aspirants and faculties, educators both inside and out of the class, and we also have a strict policy of maximum 40 students per batch so that the ideal pupil-teacher ratio can be maintained in the class throughout the sessions. We have daily mains answer writing practice sessions also, because we believe that the preparation of UPSC requires an integrated effort right from the start, where you have to prepare for both prelims, mains examination and even interview in a integrated manner. So there it can play a very important role. Plus, we know that evaluation of the performances of students become very important, and that is why we have test series that is held regularly both for the prelims and mains examination, which can act as a guide for students to understand their strengths and weaknesses. Based on that, they can streamline their preparation strategies. And we also believe that the coverage of current affairs goes a long way in ensuring success with students in examinations. That is what we also focus on our programs as such. Apart from that, we have many other features and in the courses and programs. If you want to know details about this, you can click the link in the description box. You can also download our app, Legacy IAS app, from the App Store, which can help you in getting edge in the UPSC examination as such. Now, coming back to this particular topic, recently what we have seen is there is a clear shift in the US position, more specifically Trump's position as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, because in early days of his presidency, he believed that it should Ukraine which should compromise, and they should even compromise by giving the land that has already been captured by Russia to Russia, and then that can bring war to an end. But that actually has not occurred. And also we have seen that the Trump's expectation from Putin has been very different how he has expected. And also by taking these, if you look at the past 6-7 months, we have seen a pro-Ukraine lobby that has now begun to influence strongly President Trump's decision. And the example of this we can see from the fact the earlier Trump was not in favor of supplying any kind of arms to Ukraine. He wanted to stop any kind of arm flow to the Ukraine. But again, because Putin has not shown any kind of this inclination to come to a talk or negotiation or ceasefire agreement, he has again decided to resume the supply of arms to Ukraine, more specifically the anti-defense systems such as Patriot missiles and all that. So overall, because of the shift, again it is not expected that Trump will again change its stance, and it will also be politically difficult for him, because the pro-Ukrainian lobby in US politics has become quite stronger in last few months as such. Plus, Ukraine and US also have signed agreement where they have decided to exchange critical minerals that is found in the in the territory of Ukraine. And also recently what we can see, the most important this event that has taken place in this entire 2 year is the meeting between Steve Witkoff and President Putin of Russia, where it seems that Russia and the Russian leaders are now stating that Steve Witkoff has come to Russia with an acceptable peace offer. That is why now Putin is willing to meet with Trump to bring an end to the war, possibly. Now again, we have to wait that what is the outcome of meeting to understand that how significant this meeting will be. Now, if you look at the secondary sanction strategy that Trump has begun to apply in the recent time, where we have seen that Trump has targeted the major trade partners of Russia such as India and China. For example, India currently has been facing 50% tariff, which was earlier 25%. Further, Trump has increased simply because India has kept on importing oil from Russia as such. So this is why Trump is doing so. It is basically it is believed that he wanted to exert or have a kind of leverage on Russia, and even though it will have a damaging effect on the economy of China and India, even it can damage relations between US India, US China, he is willing to go ahead and take the gamble as such. Now also we have to understand the actual impact of sanctions on Russian economy is going to be minimal, because already heavy sanctions have been imposed by the Western countries and US and Russia since last 2 years, but it seems that Russia has built its economy sanction proof because of various other ways they have found out, or loopholes that they have found out. For example, they are using third countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan to import large amount of commodities and this what you can call as important materials that they are not allowed to import by themselves. Similarly, they are using shadow fleet to sell their oil and gas in the international market as well. So overall dependence on oil and gas export is what you can say is the cornerstone of Russia's economy, and if oil and gas export reduces, obviously we can understand that Russia's revenue generation will suffer, and that can further create problem for Russia to engage in a long-term protected war as such. So that is why the secondary sanctions we also have to understand from this perspective, because if India, China are pressurized, and if they indeed stop importing oil from Russia or reduce the oil import from the Russia, in that case the economy of Russia will obviously suffer as such. Now if you try to understand about what is going to be the likely response from the Putin. So first of all, as this entire war, as if you try to understand how Russia has portrayed this entire war, so they have said that they had no other option but to go to war, because the entry of Ukraine in NATO could have posed existential threat to the Russia as such. And this is something that also Russian leaders have sold the idea to the Russian population to garner support for the war as such. Plus, economic pressure is unlikely to work, as we have discussed in the last 2 years. Even though Russia has been imposed severe sanctions, the economy has not suffered to the extent as the Western countries would have wanted. Plus, ceasefire, they believe, Russian leadership has given this idea that they will only agree for ceasefire if it work in their favor, if they work in the advantageous manner as far as their strategic goals is concerned. And because the reason is, as I told you in the beginning of video, that as of now it seems that the momentum of war is in the favor of Russia, because they have a large economy, they have oil and gas based economy, and they do not have also a democratic system where they can expect any kind of large scale opposition from the masses and people as such. So because the entire population of Russia, we can say to some extent, is behind President Putin, so he seems to be in control of war dynamics. And also as far as the European countries are concerned, their security concerns are also something that they believe to be central. The problem is that as far as the negotiation between Trump and Putin is concerned, both Europe and Ukraine has been neglected to a large extent as such. So that is something that Russia will take into account while drafting any kind of what you can say response as such. As far as the Ukraine's position is concerned, we have discussed that it has signed a critical mineral deal with US few months back, but it seems that even after signing of this mineral deal, Ukraine cannot expect a large scale commitment by US as far as the war in the Ukraine is concerned. There will be a limited commitment in the terms of supply of weapons, in terms of supply of intelligence inputs and all that. And it is because of this factor, it has been seen that President Zelensky of Ukraine has been hardly lobbying European leaders to ensure that they also are part of negotiation process, because the biggest fear that both European leaders and Ukrainian leader have is that Trump might accept Russian positions when he meet Putin, and he might exclude Ukraine from the Trump-Putin talks, and that will be something that Ukraine would not want, neither Europe will want. Now, as far as the Europe's political dilemma is concerned, that also we have to understand here, because there is, in Europe, if we talk about the leaders who are currently governing the major economies such as France, Germany, Netherlands and all that, their survival of elite class seems to be at risk here, because the elites of Europe, elite classes of European leadership has sold the people of Europe. The reason why they are supporting Ukraine is because there is a threat that if Russia is not stopped at Ukraine, it can further what you can say launch attack on the other countries of Europe as such. But that is the problem, because now people of European Union have begun to believe that Russia has no intention of attacking other European countries, and that is why, because they also we are seeing economic crisis like situation, they have begun to support the far right political parties. And these far right political parties currently are seeing a representation in the countries like Hungary, where you have Viktor Orban, you have countries like Slovakia, where you have Robert Fico. So all these leaders are largely against any kind of war support that should be provided to Ukraine by European countries as such. So Also, other problem is that they cannot ensure Ukrainian victory because they cannot directly get involved in the war, plus they have a limited capacity and capability to provide arms, weapons and any kind of indirect support to Ukraine as such. So, ending of war will seen as a defeat, and also there is economic and political gridlock because major countries of European Union, they were largely dependent on the cheap Russian oil and gas, and now because that oil and gas flow has stopped, there is a pressure of deindustrialization, there is a concern of the economic decline, especially of the powerhouses of Europe such as France and Germany. Also, we have to understand that as far as the India's strategic challenge is concerned, it is going to be there as well, because as we have discussed, Trump has imposed tariff of almost 50%, and that will obviously decrease the overall export volume from India, because US is the largest trading partner of India. And also, not only US is largest trading partner, but India runs a trade surplus with US, and the countries with which it has trade deficits such as Arabian countries or Russia or China, it is able to offset this deficit. So, if the trade volume with US decreases, the advantage India has in terms of trade surplus will also disappear. Now, obviously there is silver lining because the major sectors such as oil, pharma, IT, they have been exempted from the tariff rate. But overall, if you look at the diplomatic dilemma that India faces, it will have to in the future also balance between two interests. One, how to buy cheap oil from Russia, and second, how to overcome and minimize the impact of US penalties because of this. Now, overall, if you try to understand from India's perspective also, we can say that in this entire situation, it would be best if Trump and Putin, after their meeting, were to agree on a roadmap to peace next week, and that obviously such kind of agreement, if it results in, would likely make the threat of additional tariffs that Trump is posing toward India irrelevant in nature. That is all about this particular video. If you like the video, please like button, share the flash, friends, subscribe to the channel for more such content. Thank you very much.